Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us here at the Sonoma Community Center. My name is Jill Valavanis. I'm the Visual Arts Manager here at the Center, and I officially welcome you to Sonoma Valley, California, USA. We're delighted that you've joined us this afternoon from wherever you are. I'd like to do a little housekeeping before we get started. Just a little bit about this Zoom session. It is being recorded, and a link will be made available to anyone who would like to view this at a later time. So if you need to leave a little early, don't worry, you can catch it again later. If at any time our internet connection drops, just hang on and we'll do our best to get it reestablished. During the artist talk, please keep your microphone muted. We will have plenty of time at the end of the talk to have question and answers from Jamie and Jane. I think that's it for housekeeping, and here we go with our program. Again, welcome to the Sonoma Community Center. We were founded as originally an elementary school here in Sonoma Valley, and then changed to be a community center 70 years ago. So in 2022, we're celebrating our 70th anniversary of the Sonoma Community Center. We're a nonprofit organization providing many wonderful programs to Sonoma Valley and to people who come and visit us. And we're very well known for our arts program in printmaking, ceramics, and fiber arts in particular. We also have our beautiful gallery 212, in which I'm standing right now, which hosts a huge variety of visual arts exhibitions over the course of the year. We usually have a new exhibition every other month, so join us as often as you can. Sometimes we are live and in person, and due to this COVID surge, we are purely virtual today. Additionally, I wanted to say that Jamie will be hosting, she'll be teaching a mandala monoprint workshop here at the center in person on Saturday, March 5th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So if you'd like to experience Jamie's fabulous teaching and join her for this monoprint workshop, I encourage you to register to attend. In order to register, please go to sonomacommunitycenter.org. You can see all the things we are offering right now, and I encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter, which comes out every other week, and that keeps you up to date on all of our happenings here at the center. Next, I'd like to give a little introduction about Jamie and Jane, our fabulous artists here today. I'm so happy they're both here in person. Jami Taback is an interdisciplinary artist and thinker whose work involves printmaking, book arts, and installation. Currently, she's living and working in Santa Rosa, California, just the next town over. Her work is represented in many public and private collections. She studied with printmakers Krishna Reddy at NYU and with Ruth Leaf. Jamie is represented by the Annex Galleries in California. She's been the recipient of a California for the Arts COVID Relief Grant. She spends her days teaching printmaking processes to eager students and is committed to working in a non-toxic approach to the arts. She was recently the president of the California Society of Printmakers. Jamie is also the founding director of Talk Art Incorporated, an art history lecturing service begun in 1972 in New York City, continuing for 32 years. Jane Ingram Allen is an internationally known sculptor/installation artist who uses handmade paper and other natural materials collected in a particular time and place. Jane is originally from Alabama and now lives in Santa Rosa, California. She received a Fulbright Scholar Award for a 6-month residency in Taiwan in 2004. She has also received grants from the NEA, the New York Foundation for the Arts, Empire State Crafts Alliance, and Artist Space, among others. Jane has been an artist in residence and created site-specific works in Brazil, Nepal, Japan, and the Philippines, as well as at environmental centers, nature preserves, sculpture parks, museums, and galleries across the United States. Many of Jane's works focus on environmental issues and involve community participants in a collaborative process to create installations with multiple unique parts. So I welcome today Jami Taback and Jane Ingram Allen presenting their collaboration and their work in creating this installation titled In Deep Water. So I'm going to turn this microphone over to Jane. She's going to take you on a walk through the installation. Thank you again for joining us.
We're here. Okay. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us with the Zoom. And I'm going to take you on a walk through this installation. I wish you were here to do it in person. Okay, as you can see, these panels come down from the ceiling and are attached to floor platforms. And, you know, it is possible for people to pass behind it and look at the other side of these pieces of handmade paper with printmaking on them. And one of the things about this installation that's really exciting is that it has imagery on both sides. And so, you know, and also you're able to look through it. One of the beautiful things about this space is the great natural light from these big windows. And, you know, being able to look through the handmade paper and the thread that joins the pieces of paper that have the print imagery on both sides. Another thing that we did in this installation is we have holes in it. So, and we also have used fire retardant on the paper so that, you know, you get, when you burn them, we burn the paper a little bit, and you get these wonderful images with the burned holes in the paper. Okay, so I'm going to go out and around here and come back to the other side here, and then Jami is going to continue. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you very much for coming out today to our Zoom event for Jane and I, and we're very happy that you've come today. I want to take a few minutes to thank the Sonoma Community Center, and specifically Jill, who I met a while ago to talk about an art class, and wound up seeing this beautiful gallery space, realizing that Jane and I could set up our installation here. Jill Valavanis, the director, has been incredible, and her husband, Jim Valavanis, was very helpful in the installation and getting up on a ladder and creating this incredible display here. And I want to thank Timothy Allen here, who photographed and documented everything we've done from the very beginning. Thank you very much. And we have Eric here at the camera. I also want to tell you that our project is funded in part by the Foundation for Contemporary Arts in New York, and they are partially supporting us throughout our process. I wanted to talk about what it is like to join a collaboration and how Jane and I came together here. At some point we met, and Jane was teaching a papermaking class in Santa Rosa, and I heard about it and went with a few other artists and had this wonderful sensual sort of experience making handmade paper and using indigo and all natural fibers to create the pulp and work from the beginning of this process. And And I started to think about Jane and her process. One of her projects was called The Living Quilt. And when I saw that and participated a little bit in it, it occurred to me one day that I had this idea to create an exhibit sort of about the cycle of life and the cycles. And I called Jane and asked her if she'd be interested in collaborating with me, and she said yes right away, and I was really delighted. Up until this time, Jane and I found that our studios were about 5 minutes apart from each other, and we began to share a sandwich every few Fridays together, one alternate studios, and talk about what we're doing and about our work. And that was how our friendship blossomed and turned into my approaching her about this great project. I have been working for the last 5 years with social justice, attending that part of the climate change crisis. And this project deals with the water and the lack of water and lack of drinking water and our problems that we have all around the globe. And this project that is addressed today. So we got together and began to make the paper and talk about the subject of climate change. And we knew that we would be making handmade paper, and I would be the printmaker and be creating imagery to print on the paper. And I know there's a lot of printmakers listening in right now, and printmakers love paper. We're completely attracted to that, and it comes in many ways and shapes and forms, and the way we decide to print and the type of plate we're using dictates the paper that you might choose for your project. For me, working on handmade paper is completely different and than printing on the foreign white paper and putting a print right in the middle and it being all perfect and stiff, kind of. And here with Jane and the uneven paper shapes, I was able to see the paper not in such a structured form. And there was Jane and I, and Jane and I were making paper, and then we're at the press, and we're sort of turning the wheel of the press, and the plates are placed in different places on the paper, not in its traditional form, but they liked our printing and paper making dance. We have the plates here dancing on the paper. On the paper are solar plate etchings, linoleum block, carved. We have some beautiful watermarks in the paper, as in this piece here. There are some pale areas, and I've been interested in watermarks, making them in the paper. That's been going on for a while. And the plates I used were actually part of a series called Storm Warning, which fit very well into the maelstrom of the climate that's going on right now. And the prints and the paper, for me, are moving that type of climate and wind and energy around this piece here. We found ourselves here to work at the Sonoma Community Center and chose these beautiful windows to attract a lot of light. And that's sort of where I came to be into this project with Jane.
Okay, I can continue and talk a little bit more about this piece. One question people always want to know is, why did you choose to do this project together about the issue of water and the climate crisis? And I think it was a mutual sort of thing. We talked about it. And if you're living in Northern California, water is a very big issue right now. And as it is all over the world, but here in particular, we don't have enough water. And we've, also experienced, when I've been an artist in residence in other countries, like I did a residency in Tanzania in 2009, and experienced for the first time the lack of fresh water for drinking and everyday life purposes. And we saw women carrying, huge containers of water every day back from the spring to their home so that they would have fresh water just for ordinary use. Also, living in Taiwan for many years, I grew up in America and in the South and in New York before I went to Taiwan. And we always took water for granted. It was just something that came out of the tap and you could drink it without any problem. But in Taiwan, we found that, the tap water was not drinkable, and everyone drank water from plastic bottles. So I have been doing works about the issue of water in particular for many years, and especially focused on rivers. When I moved back to California in 2012 from Taiwan and settled in Santa Rosa, of course, water was a big issue very soon, and also things like wildfires. I've experienced evacuation 3 times from my own home and studio, and so, water became a very important issue. So I was happy to focus this piece on that issue. And, I think it's one of the important elements for life, and certainly the climate crisis is affecting water all over the world. We have things like, the glaciers melting, Siberia defrosting, and some areas of the world having too much water, like in New Orleans with hurricanes, and in Florida and other parts of the world flooding. Even here in California, there's been some flash flooding from the recent rains that we have had that have partly mitigated the drought conditions. So, focusing this on water was very important. Another thing that I was thinking about was talking a little bit about the process of collaboration and how that works. Artists are usually working alone in the studio, focused on their own things, but Jamie and I were able to work together on this very well, and each of us has to compromise things and reach some sort of mutual agreement about what we want for this collaborative installation. And I think it does succeed in kind of totally integrating printmaking and papermaking. When you look at some of these details here, sometimes it's hard to tell what's in the paper and what's printed. And so I think that's exciting for me as an artist, to see the integration of the two techniques. And 1 + 1 is not always 2. In this case, collaborating together makes it possible to do something bigger and maybe different than what we would do as individual artists. So I think that's been an exciting part of this collaboration. I think, the next Saturday, we're going to do a demonstration and another sort of talk in the printmaking studio here at the Sonoma Community Center. And that's when you'll get to see more about how this was made, the actual process. And, I will make some paper, and then we will have some paper that's already dried that Jamie will demonstrate the printmaking on, so that you can actually see how this piece came together. Another thing I wanted to mention is, you can see these are long panels that extend out into the space. And each one is about 12, 14 feet at least. And it's handmade paper sheets that are joined with threads. And these are natural threads, usually cotton. And this makes it very flexible. It can bend and flow like water, and it also can fold up very easily at the thread that joins the sheets of paper. So this piece can be very different when you want to fold it up for storage. We brought it here all in one pile that one person could easily carry. And so it's very flexible. It can be installed in many different ways to fit whatever space is available. And when I first saw this gallery, it was a brilliant sunny morning and the light was just tremendous. And I've done a lot of works outdoors with handmade paper, and I knew that that natural light would really make the paper look beautiful. And so I was very excited to be able to put it here in the Sonoma Community Center gallery. And, we've also been fortunate to have my husband, Timothy S. Allen, who is a photographer, to take photographs of the whole process. He got photos of it going up, and, that's always exciting for artists to actually see the work installed. As we were making it, it was more focused on each piece and each panel. But now we get the total impression of this installation in this very beautiful space. So I think, that's about it I wanted to say. Do you have anything?
Yes, I would like to delve a little bit more into what it is to collaborate with another artist, because it was my first experience working with another artist, and it's true, when you're alone, you make all your own decisions, you do what you want, and you don't need this only compromising if it's within your own right and left brain. However, this tempered me and slowed me down from making faster decisions because I needed to wait to speak to Jane and see what she thought. So it kind of edged us out a little bit, and it gave us a lot of time to talk to each other, and many times, because Jane also is her own person as an artist, all of a sudden we would give out our idea, and then I would stop for a minute and say, Jane, what do you think of that? How would you do this? And I think that give and take was one of the gems of collaborating with another artist and getting into someone else's head, into another artist's head, and think about what they're thinking about in their process, and of course the joining of the two process.
I would agree.
Yes,
totally. Collaboration, first of all, you have to respect what the other artist is doing and what they're thinking, and reach some sort of compromise many times. But it does force you to stretch yourself and to make and do things in a different way. I think I've always been sort of an irreverent paper maker, because I'm not afraid to change its shape, to tear it, to burn it, to treat it in very non-traditional ways. And Jamie was also willing to do that with the printmaking. And also, I didn't mention it before, but I think Jamie sort of introduced me more to the idea of printmaking using non-toxic materials. And when I took printmaking back when I was in art school many years ago, it was a very tight, controlled process. and used all of these highly toxic chemicals in the process. And now printmaking has become much more environmentally friendly. And, you know, my work was also evolving in that direction over the years to be much more about being in harmony with nature and using natural materials and things that were biodegradable and that wouldn't cause more environmental problems. Okay.
Yes. I began to work early on, like Jane said, printmaking was oil-based and we needed all these solvents and we used mordants, and there was a lot of danger in the process, and it really dated back to the 1200s, printmaking, and really kind of hadn't changed much until towards the 1970s, I was introduced to polymer plates rather than to be etching with acid into copper plates. And polymer plates just use sun and water. And that was a gigantic change because my studio is in my home and I no longer needed to have chemicals or anything smelly in the house that is associated with those printmaking methods. And concurrently, the ink industry began to respond to these, the artists who wanted to work in a chemical-free fashion and created inks that were water-soluble. Soap and water, an environmental soap, could be used to wash not only your hands and your plate that you're working on, but it just was a complete game changer for myself and so many printmakers. And I've been devoted to working and teaching in chemical-free, non-toxic, in all of my process that I bring to studios, and I teach a lot of workshops and have lots of students, and sometimes they're children. So sometimes the adults are children, and they end up working in a cleaner, fresher way, and you just feel better after you've been in a studio for hours like that. So I'm really indebted to the ink companies that followed suit and created what we have today. Almost any process can be non-toxic, does not have to use oil-based.
Okay, I thought of one other thing I wanted to mention about the process of making an installation and making it site-specific. You know, this piece is modular so that there are 12 panels and they can be torqued or turned or even attached in different places depending on how we want to interact with the gallery space. And so, you know, it was exciting to come here and see this beautiful space with the great natural light and the really tall ceilings so that, you know, we were able to do it here. And we, I think, started this project about August or September. And, you know, we were just making these pieces and putting them together in panels. And then we saw this huge space and we thought, oh, we've really got to make more. And so we worked really hard in late November and December after we got this unexpected opportunity to do a 2-week exhibition here at the Sonoma Community Center Gallery. And so it was exciting to design it for this space. And I think, you know, Jamie is used to, you know, putting the work on the wall. And in my work with handmade paper and installation and sculpture, I was always making it hanging in space so that it was two-sided and the viewers walk around it and sometimes get encircled or, you know, into the whole piece. And so it was interesting to think about this. You look at it, you look through it, you can walk around it, you know, get it from many different viewpoints. And the next time we install this, you know, it may be bigger and it may be smaller, and it will be totally different as it interacts and becomes site-specific for whatever gallery space is put in.
It's true, we've already begun to engage in those conversations with each other about where we can go and the configuration of the paper, and it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to work with Jane.
And with you, I think
Yes,
it's really
we've
been a good
enjoyed each
collaboration.
other, yes, very
And
much.
each of us, you know, contributing our own specialties
Our
in art
energies
and,
energy
you know,
and
working
energies.
together. It's a really interesting process. Okay,
Yes.
I think that's
I think
all.
I'm
If we
good.
can open it up for
Take some
questions.
We have a few questions in the
All
chat
right.
box. The first one from Jennifer Baker asks, how did you get the blue color in paper?
Oh, that's a good question.
Question.
The blue color. Yeah, when we had the idea of, you know, making a piece about water, I immediately thought of blue, and I love blue. And, you know, when you look at water, it's, you know, really clear, but the sky is reflected in it most of the time, and you can, you know, take a Lake Tahoe blue and the blue of the Caribbean oceans. And so I colored the pulp. You know, it comes as a natural off-white color usually, and I colored it with a liquid fiber reactive dye. So it's dyed in the pulp. And I use dye instead of pigment. This is, you know, for the paper makers and more technical, and we'll probably get into that more next week. But dye is transparent more. So I wanted to make this very thin paper that was more Japanese style paper so that the light would come through it, and that using the liquid fiber reactive dye to color the pulp. And we mixed a lot of white pulp in with it to make, you know, lighter shades of blue. And I mixed some gray and other natural plant fibers into it. And I also used some blue jean pulp. You know, blue jeans are made with 100% cotton sometimes, and dyed with indigo, which is a natural color that gives a very beautiful blue. So some of this paper here is from blue jeans, old blue jeans that have been cut up and beaten in a big machine to turn the cotton fibers into paper pulp. And it also has some other fibers in it that all come from plants. So it's all natural fiber material. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, Joyce Byram asks about the fire retardant process.
Oh, okay. You want to go with that? The fire retardant?
Jane has a liquid that was painted onto the paper and left some areas open so that, because if you just put a flame to the paper dry, it'll just burn up,
burst up
like
and
flash
burn
paper.
all over.
So with that, we sat with little candles basically and burned holes, and it was in relationship to back to the climate crisis and having a controlled burn that is often used for safety reasons in communities to stop a fire. So we gone from the water to burning and the fire, and that was really fun to add to the paper, and also for me, here I'm printing, and then I'm burning up some parts of the prints. So it's not my usual way of working, but I wouldn't work any other way now.
Yeah.
So
I think it was really exciting. I had done some burned works before, and I first got introduced to the idea of using fire retardant on handmade paper when I made a piece for the New York City Subway's Creative Stations program in, I think it was 1992. And I had to go to these meetings and talk to them about putting paper and thread into the subways. And they told me the fire marshal would come through and put a torch to it. And so I found out about flame retardant.
Flame retardant.
And it's the same thing that's used on kids' pajamas and many things in public spaces now to keep them from burning. And so in this piece, we would make the paper, print on it, get it dry, and then paint some flame retardant or fire retardant on it.
Actually, we called it, we said we have to give them the treatment now.
Yeah.
And so that required burning, and it was the
And
threading
making
and
holes
standing and putting all the threads
Yeah.
along it to support the paper,
Yeah.
gave it another dimension
Mhm.
and sort of a roadmap to
Yeah.
what we need to do, and added a lot of energy to the papers.
And going back to the other question about color, you know, it's not all blue. There are accents of orange because that again refers to the fire. And, you know, also has the black charcoal from the burning and the black ink, of course. And then, you know, we added some other
Watermarks. You need
accent.
watermarks in the
Yeah.
paper too.
Yeah, they're rain process and using water itself to make marks in the paper in the process of forming
And
the
I
sheets
think that
of
that
paper.
really helps the piece come together, because we have many paradigms of the trail of water, the trail of the burn holes, the trail of the prints that take the eye through the piece and help the viewer to travel along the imagery. So that also keeps the piece united.
And I think if you were here to see it in person, you could spend time, you know, looking at the individual elements and,
Yes.
you know, examining them and, you know, trying to figure out what is in it and how it's made. And then, you know, seeing it all together as an installation. So it has, you know, many different levels that you can look at it,
Right.
which is exciting
Right.
for us, I think.
It is, and all along we would say, well, what can we do on the next grouping? And it was important that we kept ourselves excited through the process and didn't get bored and keep doing the same thing and keep it more rudimentary. And we kept going for changes and keeping ourselves very interested.
Yeah, I don't know exactly which one of these we made first,
Yeah.
but, you know, it did evolve and change and got freer and more chaotic in a way as we worked on it, and of course grew. So it was kind of an organic development process.
We never had one moment where we didn't completely connect. We just flowed
We just
like the water.
kept doing it and working on it. Okay, any other questions?
Question for Jamie. Did you print on a press or a freeform way?
We?
Actually, I printed both ways.
Yeah, Jamie has a big press, you know, the traditional press in
I
his
have
studio, but
a Sturgis press at the house.
and we worked
and I use
there.
that.
But we also did the hand printing with some linoleum blocks.
Some of the linoleum blocks, I showed Jane how I use a Baron for that to press it in, because the paper was fine and thin. And we worked on dry paper. Traditionally, printers generally print on dampened wet paper, but it was sort of really nice to move from the dry paper right to the
And
print.
this paper is
And so,
very
yes.
fabric-like, really, because of the way it's made in the Japanese way and because of the plant fibers in it. And, you know, most printmaking paper would be treated with sizing and then able to put in a tray of water and soak and get it flexible again. But here, because it was handmade paper, what we call water leaf paper with no sizing or no other additives, it was very flexible and it worked great, I think.
Yeah, I think
To
so.
print in either on the press in the traditional way or the
Yes.
hand using the barren.
And this really fine natural paper was kind of seductive once you begin to print on it, and I'm going to have to consider coming over to Jane after the process to create some paper for some incredible body of work I'll be thinking about. But paper, traditionally paper is made in a factory, and like Jane said, there's sizing put into papers. Printmakers know them as Arches and BFK Reeves and Fabriano, and they have wonderful names, and they're old printmaking companies. And when they make the paper in the factory, they are putting sizing into the paper to protect the paper while it's being moved and transferred and stored. It gives it a shelf life. And while it has that sizing in it is the time when, if it gets marked with your finger or something, that's when you could erase or clean it up before you cut it down to put it into print. But it would you soak the paper to remove the sizing from the paper. That takes about 20 minutes. And that's when the paper becomes very fragile and has to be handled exceptionally carefully and placed on this printing press, and it goes under several hundred pounds of pressure to give an embossing into the paper that you've dampened. So it doesn't matter if the paper is hot pressed or cold pressed or molded, it is made with this sizing in it that needs to be extracted and leached out of it into a little bath of fresh water.
Yeah, you just mentioned embossing. In some of the paper making process, we used that too to make embossments into the paper as it's formed. And we used some rusty metal things that we found in your studio.
Yes, I had some little large washers. And
yeah, you dry the paper on it, and then, you know, when it dries, you lift it up and take the washer out, and you get that impression that stays in the paper even when it's put through the press. I was pretty amazed. And we also got some color from the rust in the metal washers, which was an exciting process. So we've tried all sorts of things in this whole process of doing this piece, and we'll continue stretching the printmaking and the paper making and making, you know, different installations with this piece.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what people will be seeing during the demo next week?
Oh, sure. I am going to, well, we should start with Jane, who will be making paper and show you how we put these beautiful pieces together. And then we will already have dried paper we've made ahead of time, same papers. And I will show you, I'll ink up a solar plate for you, a polymer plate, and talk about the ink and the press. And that's going to be my part of it. I'll also print a linoleum block with the barrel.
Yeah, I'll bring a tub of pulp and all the paper making stuff, and do it right in the printmaking studio. And you know, when you make the paper, it takes a while to dry. I might think of bringing an iron and ironing it dry, but usually we just hang it on a clothesline and let it dry overnight and then do the printing on it. But as she said, we'll have some we've already made, thinking about the future and what we'll continue doing, that we'll print in that demonstration. So next week, I think you should come back, hopefully, and, you know, we'll talk much more about the process, the paper making and the print making, and how they integrate and work together. Oh, and we should mention that here in the gallery, we've put some individual pieces that we've made and printed on, and they are available for sale. And we're thinking of it kind of like a donation to the Sonoma Community Center Gallery program and to the continuation of this project. You know, we need to buy more materials and, you know, think about shipping expenses and all the things that would happen if we are able to travel this show as we envision to different galleries in America and even in other countries.
Yeah.
And so we'll be thinking about that. And so, you know, we also should say that people could make an appointment with us to come and see it in person. And that
Yes.
would be fine.
Yes, we can do that with small groups.
And we're vaccinated and boosted and all of that good stuff. And hopefully we would, you know, all still, of course, be wearing masks and keeping social distance. But it would be really exciting if some people could contact us or contact Jill here at the center and come to see it in person in the next 2 weeks.
Actually, people are welcome to show up during business hours, as long as they are masked and have proof of vaccination or negative COVID test.
Okay.
Small groups of up to 4 people can come into the gallery at a time.
Oh, that's very
good.
nice.
That's
very nice.
Can you tell us more about where these pieces will be going next?
Okay, we're putting out proposals now to many different places. We do have one committed place already that will be probably in November or December of this year, and that's at Gallery Route 1 in Point Reyes Station, California. They have a project space, and one of their focuses is the environment. And so we sent this idea to them, and they were very excited about it. And so it will be in the Gallery Route 1, which is in Point Reyes Station, in Northern California, a little bit closer to San Francisco. It's in Marin County.
It's a beautiful, very large space, and we, as Jane said, it's devoted to environmental projects, so that's perfect for us.
But the installation there will be different. It's a lower ceiling, you know, more of a normal white box kind of gallery space. This, you know, is just really unusual because it was an old school and has, you know, these terrific windows and, you know, all of the architectural features that you don't usually see in a traditional gallery.
True.
So I'd like to thank Jill again and the Sonoma Community Center. Okay.
So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today on this fabulous exhibition in a beautiful space here in Sonoma. At this point, upon conclusion, I invite you all to unmute and give a round of applause and some hoots and hollers for Jamie and Jane.
Congratulations.
Yay!
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
It's been a pleasure. Pleasure.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jane.
I'll be uploading the video shortly, and I'll put a link at sonomacommunitycenter.org, and you can go ahead and watch it as much as you like.
Thank you.
So I hope to see you all a week from today at the same time. It's going to be a wet and wild and fabulous run. I'll be holding the camera and running around, and hopefully I won't drop it in the vat of pulp. So I hope to see you all next week via Zoom, and the link for that is on the website as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Beautiful.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much.
I can't wait to see who actually is on there.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Well done. Bye-bye.
Bye.